Israeli diplomat assassinated in Beijing, public security withholds suspect's nationality. Beijing holds consecutive tense meetings, and a large number of petitioners were deported. Rapid capital flight prompts the CCP to issue a ban on offshore investments. National poverty alleviation deemed a fraud, with 66 million people relying on low-income support. Chinese people skeptical of domestic tourism's hotness, inbound to Beijing and Shanghai dropped about 90%. It's all covered in today's China Truths. Israeli diplomat assassinated in Beijing, public security withholds suspect's nationality. On Friday the 13th, a horrifying video of an attack on a diplomat of the Israeli embassy in China in Beijing was circulated on the internet. The victim fell to the ground in blood. The assailant fled the scene after the attack. Later that evening, the Chaoyang District Public Security in Beijing released an incident report indicating that on the 13th, around 2 p.m., in front of a supermarket in Zhujiazhuang, Chaoyang District, an Israeli diplomatic family member, male, 50 years old, was assaulted by a foreign national suspect, male, 53 years old, who was engaged in a small commodity business in Beijing. The suspect has been apprehended. The public security report claimed that the victim was a family member of a diplomat and only vaguely referred to the suspect's nationality as a foreign national. However, when the video of the incident surfaced, messages circulating on the internet asserted that the victim distinctly identified themselves as an employee of the Israeli embassy when seeking help from the public. On the same day, the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs confirmed with the media that an employee of the Israeli embassy in Beijing was indeed attacked and subsequently taken to the hospital. If the victim's designation was changed from diplomat to diplomat's family member, it would evidently lessen the gravity of this diplomatic incident. According to the circulated video, the perpetrator's appearance doesn't appear to be of Chinese ethnicity, but determining their nationality solely based on their appearance is challenging. This attack on an Israeli diplomat occurred in the heavily secured embassy district of Beijing, which has left the public shocked. Some Chinese netizens exclaimed, "There is a terrorist attack in Beijing too." Following Hamas' attack on Israel, Israel has consistently sought support from the Chinese Communist Party, CCP. However, Beijing has repeatedly declined to condemn the Hamas attacks. While the Chinese Communist Party publicly maintains neutrality, it covertly influences public opinion to favor Hamas and Palestine, fomenting hatred against Israel. Chinese social media is rife with calls for violence against Israel. Recently, under public pressure, the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson admitted for the first time that 3 Chinese citizens died in Israel, with 2 missing. Nevertheless, the spokesperson consistently refrains from mentioning that the perpetrators of the attacks on Chinese citizens were associated with Hamas. Beijing holds consecutive tense meetings, and a large number of petitioners were deported. Beijing has recently hosted a series of major meetings, including the just-concluded 18th National Congress of the All-China Federation of Trade Unions and the upcoming Belt and Road International Forum scheduled to take place from the 17th to the 18th. These events have created a tense political atmosphere. According to petitioners in Beijing, extensive identity checks are being carried out, resulting in the deportation of numerous petitioners. Some have turned to the internet to seek assistance. Videos have also surfaced, revealing that the Beijing government is preventing petitioners from renting accommodations in the city. Additionally, certain petitioners are being detained by unidentified individuals, effectively depriving them of their freedom. There have been instances of petitioners being intercepted at various transportation stations, preventing them from entering Beijing. A petitioner from Beijing named Wang noted that in the past, he used to visit the State Bureau for letters and calls every day, just to swipe his card and register my visit. But now, the situation has become more intense. Whenever there's a major or minor conference, they immediately conduct meetings. Interceptions have become more frequent. He said, "If we don't take action, our issues won't get resolved. When we look for employment, no one is willing to hire people like us, which has led to us accumulating debts over the years." Videos shared by petitioners show that on the 13th, the front of the National Bureau for Letters and Calls was still teeming with people, with many having queued up overnight. Even before dawn, at 5 a.m., the area was already congested with people. Rapid capital flight prompts the CCP to issue a ban on offshore investments. The relentless 3-year campaign of zero COVID in China has ignited a wave of emigration among the nation's middle-class citizens, all yearning for a new life abroad. However, the onerous web of foreign exchange restrictions imposed by the Chinese Communist Party has made it increasingly formidable to transfer their entire wealth overseas. In a recent development, Reuters reported that on September 28, the Shanghai Regulatory Bureau of the China Securities Regulatory Commission introduced a directive, effectively shutting the door for mainland China-based securities firms and their global affiliates to engage new clients in offshore transactions. Existing domestic clients' new investments will undergo meticulous scrutiny. Moreover, the directive sets a deadline for these firms to remove application programs and websites catering to domestic clients by the end of October this year. This new prohibition coincides with a tumultuous period in the Chinese stock markets, marked by a historic exodus of foreign capital and a simultaneous record low in foreign direct investment. Meanwhile, private capital is swiftly exiting the country, while the renminbi exchange rate approaches unprecedented lows. Should these reports hold true, it would signify the inaugural definitive restriction levied by Chinese regulatory authorities on onshore investors' offshore securities transactions. On October 13, NTD-TV highlighted that the Chinese government's clampdown on overseas securities investments will merely partially impede the exodus of capital. Mr. Liang Xiaohua, a former chief compliance officer at a prominent Chinese asset management firm, shared insights into various techniques employed by Chinese individuals to relocate their assets abroad. Some rely on underground money changers who charge fees ranging from 1% to 3% to facilitate fund transfers out of the country. Others establish trading companies, inflating product prices to effortlessly move their wealth overseas. Mr. Liang also underscored that the most straightforward path to transferring substantial sums lies in the hands of those with influence within the Chinese Communist Party, who hold sway over the Red Territory. These individuals can seamlessly shift tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of yuan with impunity. What's intriguing is that, whether they are ordinary citizens or party state dignitaries, they are all seeking ways to jump ship. National poverty alleviation deemed a fraud, with 66 million people relying on low-income support. Recently, China's State Council recently revealed that there are a minimum of 66 million low-income individuals within the country. This information has sparked outrage among Chinese netizens. On the popular social media platform Weibo, several users have pointed out that the nationwide tally of low-income citizens can't possibly be as low as 66 million. They're critical of the Chinese government's approach, accusing it of disregarding a substantial portion of the population living in poverty. Some are asking, "Why am I excluded?" Others are raising questions like, "We contribute to unemployment insurance when we work, but has anyone actually benefited from it when they were unemployed?" One user is even questioning the authenticity of the data, wondering, is this data really representative of the common people? Lu Hua, a petitioner from Shenyang, shared her experiences with Radio Free Asia, highlighting her status as a typical impoverished individual in China. She emphasizes, currently, an estimated 40% to 50% of China's population is living in poverty. After 3 years of the pandemic, most people struggle to make ends meet. It seems that those who continue to receive subsistence allowances are well-connected individuals, such as the nephews of village secretaries, relatives of township secretaries, and the like. It's the associates of those in power who benefit from these allowances, while the genuinely needy are left in the lurch. Those who are truly struggling and ill can do nothing but await their fate. A news commentator identifies two significant concerns in this situation. Firstly, he points out that authorities have consistently downplayed the issue by reporting lower numbers of recipients of subsistence allowances and low-income citizens. Suddenly announcing a figure of 66 million low-income individuals implies that the previous efforts to alleviate poverty were far from achieving their goals. Chinese people skeptical of domestic tourism's hotness, inbound to Beijing and Shanghai dropped about 90%. On the day China ended its 8-day-long holiday on October 6, the Ministry of Culture and Tourism of the Communist Party of China said that the number of domestic travelers during this long holiday reached 826 million, exceeding the number in 2019 before the epidemic. However, people were skeptical. In addition, contrary to the hotness of domestic tourism, the number of people traveling to Thailand during this year's long holiday is only half of that in 2019. In the first half of this year, the number of tourists entering Beijing and Shanghai was only about 10% of that in 2019. On October 6, the Ministry of Culture and Tourism of the Communist Party of China released data. During this year's Mid-Autumn Festival and National Day holidays, the number of domestic tourist trips was 826 million, an increase of 4.1% from 2019. Domestic tourism revenue was 753.43 billion yuan, approximately $103.238 billion US dollars, an increase of 1.5% compared with 2019. However, the public expressed doubts about these official figures. The real situation. Song Qing, pseudonym, the owner of a seafood restaurant in Weihai, Shandong Province, recently said, "There are some people at the Lugong Island attractions, but not as many as before the pandemic, and the number of customers entering the restaurant to eat is not more than usual." He also said that in order to stimulate tourism, Shandong Province has exempted bus tickets for those over 60 years old, and tourist attractions are also half price or free. But still no one comes. People really have no money. The economy is not good now, young people can't make money, and some elderly people subsidize part of their pensions to their children. In addition to maintaining their living expenses, they have less other expenses. Yang Yimo, pseudonym, owner of a Shanghai brand clothing store, said, "When the pandemic was under lockdown, I always thought about the lifting of the lockdown. After the lockdown was lifted, I thought that business would be good during the Chinese New Year, and that there might be more tourists during the Mid-Autumn Festival this year. People are walking on the streets, few are going into stores to spend money, and there are obviously not as many foreign tourists as in previous years." He said, "Many companies and factories have laid off workers and closed down due to lack of orders. There are fewer out-of-town workers. Shops are deserted. Many shops around are closed." Hu Jun, pseudonym, a resident of Xi'an, questioned whether the official figures were fake. He said that people in many areas are complaining that no one is going to popular local scenic spots, but officials say that the number of tourists has increased significantly. "I read on the internet that if you go out to buy food in Zhengzhou, you will be counted as a tourist." He said, "How many people are there in total in China? Is it still 1.4 billion? Some foreign media reported that 400 million people died in the 3 years of the epidemic. More than 800 million people traveled? Have all the farmers gone out to travel?" The doubt about revenue figure is even greater. Many people don't have money to go out and travel on a budget. Going to eat nearby and take photos is considered a trip? Many shop owners in our WeChat group are complaining about the lack of business. After the holidays, there will be a group of shops closed. Number of inbound tourists plummets by 90%, tourists to Thailand drop 50%. According to official data from the Chinese Communist Party, the number of Chinese tourists traveling to Thailand during the Mid-Autumn Festival and National Day holiday this year is only about half of the same period in 2019. Before the epidemic, China used to be Thailand's largest source of tourists. In 2019, Thailand received an average of 30,000 Chinese tourists every day. From September 25 to October 1 this year, Thailand received an average of only 15,200 Chinese tourists per day. Although Beijing has introduced preferential entry policies, the number of tourists visiting Chinese destinations is still about 90% lower than before the epidemic. In the first half of this year, there were only more than 400,000 tourists entering Beijing, which was 10% of the same period in 2019. The number of inbound tourists entering Shanghai was 1.24 million, which was less than 13% of that in 2019. Due to the pandemic, inbound travel agencies have been forced to close down a large number in recent years. According to data from the 21st Century Business Herald, 14,906 inbound travel agencies closed down in 2020, and another 6,324 in the first half of 2021. In 2019, the number of direct employees in China's tourism market reached 5.164 million, and the number of related employees reached tens of millions. However, the three-year pandemic has caused the number of employees to drop sharply from 5.16 million to 720,000. Li Yuanhua, a former professor at Capital Normal University in Beijing, believes that the CCP's unreasonable and authoritarian behavior during the three-year lockdown has deterred many foreign tourists. He said Beijing's policies and measures have deterred many foreign tourists, which is the main reason for the decrease in foreign tourists. Furthermore, Beijing is particularly unfriendly to foreigners. It is sometimes anti-American, sometimes anti-Japanese, anti-this, anti-that. Many citizens of the host country are disgusted with Beijing's policies, which is also one of the reasons why they will not travel to China for the time being. Don't forget to comment in the section below to share your opinions on today's topic with us. Make sure to like and subscribe to see more interesting topics from China Truths, and thank you for tuning in.